What's up, guys? Today we have Nick Fuentes debating Ryan Dawson on Christianity.
My view of morality is Christian, so it goes further than just contract law. It does go into sexuality, it does go into gender, it goes into the family, and so that's where we disagree. And that's why I say again, not pejoratively, that's more of a liberal view. This idea that what matters is for the government to protect a person's right to express themselves. You know, those ideas like tolerance and all of that, these are not Christian morals. That's more based on a liberal paradigm. So I want a Christian government that says no, like we're not going to promote
which kind of Christian, because there's plenty of Christian churches
Catholic
and stuff that cuck over on all the gay marriage and all the rest of it as well. You know, it's like, well, that's your kind of Christianity, and I think it's more in tune with what the scriptures actually say. But religion is as religion does, and so you've got endorsements, like a lot of the people involved in all this tranny stuff and stuff, they're Christian.
Wait, so
their
Ryan,
schools are Christian.
Ryan,
the majority of the population is Christian.
You think the Catholic Church has remained the most solid out of all the factions of Christianity?
I don't know enough about Eastern Orthodox, but probably one of those two. The Protestant sect has been largely taken over by consumerism, it seems like.
Nick, have you looked into the Council of Nicaea and what was manipulated in the Bible? I was learning about that from Ryan, and then the panel got crazy.
No, what was manipulated in the Bible?
Well, the first Council of Nicaea removed a bunch of books from the Bible, so you didn't get to hear whole Gospels even. And it's weird, like, well, why did they decide to remove these particular books? And then, you know, Christianity as it was compared to now, especially with the Protestants, especially with the Schofield version, has been subverted.
Well, the Council of Nicaea, the task was to evaluate which would be the canonical books of the Bible based on their authenticity. And so, you know, if you have a particular argument about which Gospels deserve to be in based on their authenticity, I'd be interested. But, you know, but it's not a question of
you'd
manipulation.
include like Judah and Thomas, right? Like they're all in the other books, so they don't get to say their own.
But do you know about their credibility, their authenticity? Are they authentic?
Well, I don't think any of them are authentic, so it doesn't matter to me, but I think they're as authentic as the other ones. I mean,
there you go.
They definitely, I think if you include them, you end up with a better version of the Bible than what's there now.
But I think that gets to the heart of the matter, because if you believe that the whole Bible is fake, you're saying, well, you know, the Catholic Church manipulated the Bible because they're not telling the other side of the story. And it's like, but you don't believe any of it. You don't believe any of the books are authentic.
I think they're useful. I just don't add the supernatural stuff to it.
Okay, but I don't think they're useful if they're not supernatural. I mean, they might be interesting, or they might be, elucidate anthropological information. But the point of the scriptures is to get us to heaven. It is a supernatural basis. So, I mean, that's my problem. A lot of people...
Yeah, you have to believe in heaven and all first to think that that's what they're doing.
Yeah, well, exactly. And,
right.
You know, when you come in and say, well, the Bible's been manipulated by the Council of Nicaea, it's like, well, I mean, you think the whole thing's manipulated. You think that, you know, religion is manipulating people, right?
Yeah, because what they did, like the Book of Romans had, same thing. They've got the divine right of kings, right? Whether it's sultan, kings, whatever, that the form of government under Christianity is supposed to be a monarchy. We live under a republic. Most Christians today are not advocating a return to a monarchy.
I am, though. But I am.
Well, good for you.
Well, but then that's the thing is, you know, and this also gets back to the liberal question. There's a really good book by Alasdair MacIntyre, he's actually a Straussian, and I don't like Straussians because they're hardcore Zionists, but he has a good book about the history of liberalism, and his idea about it, and I tend to agree with this, is that liberalism is an innovation that comes out of the Middle Ages, and specifically the religious wars. It comes out of the 30 Years' War. It comes out of the English Civil War. It comes out of the beef between Protestants and Catholics. And the innovation is this. If people cannot come to a consensus on things like, what church do we believe in? Where do we go when we die? What God do we believe in? Liberalism says, let's defer all the important questions. Let's say that it's okay that we all disagree. let's defer having a consensus and therefore any authority. Like the government can't say, you have to be Catholic or you have to be Protestant. We're going to fight and die for it. Because if we did that, it would be nonstop fighting and dying. So let's put an end to the fighting and dying, and we can agree on one thing. And the one thing we can agree on is we all want to live. We don't want to be in the state of nature, right? Or we don't want to have fear for our lives because, Rousseau and Hobbes say that if you're in a state of nature where you're constantly concerned about being killed and everybody's a threat and everybody's a danger, then everything is permitted. Like any action, killing, stealing is self-defense. So the liberal consensus is to say, let's just have a strong state that prevents people from killing each other, because that's the only thing we can agree on is we all want to be alive. And therefore, we don't need to have convictions about things that people are willing to fight and die over. That's the thing. I am not a liberal. I reject liberalism. I want to move beyond liberalism and say there are some things that are worth fighting and dying for, which are the true church, which are the real God, which is right and wrong. And I think that what you and a guy like Destiny have in common, I know that's not a flattering comparison, is that in my conversation with Destiny, he said things like, there's nothing that's worth fighting and dying over. He says, I don't even think about the afterlife because it's not practical. It's not important. We can never know. So why bother talking about it? Whereas Christians, no matter the stripes, say, we deeply care, and we are people of faith. We believe in an afterlife. We deeply care about debating where we go and what is a real God and what is the authenticity of the scriptures and how do we interpret the Bible and so on. And so, that's where the fundamental disagreement is I sort of reject the big thrust of the last 500 years, which says, let's just put our differences aside and make some money and live a good life. I feel like to live a good life, we have to be virtuous. We have to observe morality. We have to get into those things. And
the thing is, because it is subjective, you have all these different sects, and if they all have your ideology of it, I'm willing to fight and die for my version of whatever religion they're following, we have centuries of war, and which is why we stepped away from it. I'd rather have peace and trade. There's still things worth fighting for. I'd fight for my kids for anything, right? I'm fighting against all this woke nonsense and stuff. I'd even be willing to die for it. I don't know that'd be a situation where I could die to fight.
So it's the same, because Ryan just said, I'm willing to fight and die for my kids against this woke stuff. Like you're willing to fight and die. There's people on the other side that are willing to fight and die for the woke stuff. So it doesn't make any sense. They're doing the same thing.
Fight it, but you can have those moral principles without having supernatural beliefs. The thing is with dogmatism, though, is each one thinks, well, this is the truth, and the rest of them got it wrong, right? But my version of my religion is the one, but the other guy thinks the same thing, and another guy thinks the same thing. If you all have these different Protestant sects and Catholics and all fighting each other, and Muslims fighting each other, and Muslims fighting Christians, it is better not to kill each other over your certainty of what you think is going to be your route to heaven. I'm pretty sure it's not endless war.
I disagree. I think that war is worthwhile, and I think that killing is now. Hang on. I'm not advocating violence. Okay, I'm not advocating violence.
That didn't sound very Christian.
Hey, look. Sometimes, if the war's in your backyard, you have to do it, right?
Well,
but it is a dumb thing to start a war over which church is getting the money or something.
That's the thing, though, is you said yourself that you would fight for your kids. And so, like, deep in your bones, you get that there are things worth dying for. There are lines that can't be crossed that'd be worth taking up arms over. Now, things like transgenderism, I mean, you say that's, and I'm not trying to debate here and say, so what you're saying, but I'm just, I'm just using this argument.
It's just people playing pretend.
Well, okay. But there are progressives out there that say that they would fight for their kid's right to be trans. They would say that my kid is trans. That's who he or she is. They're a trans, and I'm going to fight for them to get their gender affirming care. I will fight. Now you see these trans, they're arming up in like Texas. They're all gun nuts. So you got trans with the guns at the protest, and then you got not with the guns at the protest. And one is saying, well, we're going to fight to let our kids go to the drag show and be trans. And the other side is saying, we're going to fight to prevent our kids from going there. Now, would you say that that's something that would be, and again, not talking about like a civil war, let's go out and be vigilantes, but that's something we're fighting for, right?
That can be resolved. The truth in the matter, that can be resolved because there really is only two genders. you can't really get at the who's right between one religious group and another because it's both based on faith and imagination.
No.
Isn't it subjective, though?
You know, this is the problem with these atheists. The same way you believe there's two genders, there's people that will never ever change idea and defend the 6,000 genders ideology till they die. So it's the same thing. We believe the true church is the Catholic Church founded by Jesus Christ himself, but there will always be Protestants, Muslims, Jews, Hindus. That's why Nick is saying it's a liberal view, because it is. Like, if we pretend it's not the truth, so what is the truth? Yeah, that's why you can't really trust atheists, because they have no real foundation of what they believe. Like this guy Ryan is saying, I can fight for what I think is the truth, but you can't, because you believe in God. It doesn't make any sense. But guys, let me know in the comments what you think, if you agree or disagree. Leave a like if you want to. Christ is King, and God bless you.